My name is Sienna Whitt, and I'm 36 years old. Last Memorial Day, my younger sister stood up at our family picnic, raised a glass in front of 25 relatives, and called me a desperate woman who never grew out of broke. My parents laughed. My mother actually clapped. I lifted my own glass, returned the toast in 11 words, and 25 faces forgot how to swallow. But the story started 6 months earlier, at 7:42 in the morning, with one small notification on my phone and a folder I would not open in front of anyone for another half a year. Because when my family finally chose to look inside that folder, 3 of them cried. None of them was me. Before I take you back to that May morning, tap the like button if you've ever held a quiet truth a long time. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read everyone. Now let me bring you back to Memorial Day, 6:00 in the morning, and a bowl of my grandmother's potato salad. The kitchen radio was already on when I came downstairs. It was playing something from 1962, low, the way my grandmother used to play it when she made breakfast for half the county. I had set out the bowl the night before. I had measured the mayonnaise the night before. The night before, I had also placed a folder of brown paper inside the bottom of my canvas tote and zipped the inner pocket shut. I did not check the folder. I had checked it twice already that week. The wind off the lake came through the window above the sink, warm in a way that did not feel like Vermont yet. It carried the smell of pine and a thin ribbon of mayonnaise as I stirred. Dill went in last. My grandmother had told me that dill always lasts so it doesn't bruise. I packed the bowl in the cooler with 2 ice packs. I packed a second smaller envelope on top of the folder, the one with my Aunt Marina's name written in pencil. The envelope was thinner than the folder. Some things are. I did not put on makeup. I did not change out of the cotton dress I had ironed Friday. The dress was navy. My mother once told me navy made me look like a bank teller. I had remembered the comment for 14 years, and I had bought the dress anyway. In the hallway mirror, I checked the time. 6:40. The drive to my parents' lake house was 40 minutes if I took the back road, 50 if I went around through town. I took the back road. A pair of mourning doves had nested in the eave above my front porch. They were the only thing that watched me leave. I locked the door, set the cooler in the back seat, set the tote in the passenger seat, and put the key in the ignition. The folder against the leather made a small, stiff sound that I felt in my hand. I had my potato salad. I had my folder. I was ready in a way my family would not recognize for another 6 weeks. I did not look back at the house when I pulled out of the driveway. The mourning doves did not move. The radio in the kitchen behind the locked door kept playing music from 1962 to no one. There were already 11 cars in the gravel turnaround when I arrived. By noon, there would be 25 people, give or take a cousin. The lake house had been in our family since the 70s, and Memorial Day had been mandatory since I was old enough to carry a chair. I parked at the far end near the boathouse. I had learned years ago to park where I could leave first. My mother saw Tessa pull up before she saw me. I watched it happen from across the gravel. My sister stepped out of a white Mercedes, the kind with the leather that smells like a hotel lobby. Her dress was white linen. Her sunglasses were also white. She looked like a magazine someone had folded over. "There's my star," my mother said, and ran. She actually ran, which a 65-year-old woman with a knee replacement should not do. Brett, my brother-in-law, climbed out of the passenger side and lifted both palms toward the trunk in a gesture that meant nothing. He always trailed Tessa by a half step. He always carried the bag. My father was on the porch. He nodded at me. He did not stand up. I lifted my cooler from the back seat and walked toward the house with the canvas tote on my shoulder. The bowl was heavy. The folder was heavier. Aunt Marina was at the cooler near the porch steps, rearranging beer cans no one had asked her to rearrange. She glanced up when I set my bowl down beside her. "Did you bring it?" she said. Her voice was so level it could have been about ice. I nodded. She put her hand on my forearm for 1 second, just one. Then she went back to the cans. 20 feet away, Tessa was laughing. Something about the boathouse. Something about a memory only her version of the family had. The strap of her white leather purse made a small tearing sound, and the bag dropped half an inch on her hip. She caught it, laughed louder, said something about cheap craftsmanship in Italian leather. The cousins who heard it laughed with her. My mother had 2 daughters. One she introduced first. One she introduced when she remembered. I poured myself a glass of water. I waited. Tessa was telling the Tuscaniani story by 10:15. I had heard it once already 2 weeks earlier on a phone call I had not been part of, but had still somehow received the highlights of through 3 cousins. I just took Mom and Dad to Tuscaniani, she said. She was holding a paper plate she had not yet put food on. They were so wrung out from the year. They needed it. I told Brett, the parents come first. A great aunt of mine made the appropriate sound. 2 cousins murmured. Brett behind her did not look up. The truth, which Phyllis Crane had shown me in a printed bank statement 6 weeks earlier, was that my parents had paid for the trip themselves. Tessa had clicked a button on a booking site. The button had been linked to my mother's debit card. I let it ride. I had given up correcting Tessa in public around the time I turned 30. My phone vibrated against my hip. I stepped behind the porch screen where the slatted shadow fell across the wood floor in long, pale stripes and looked at the screen. The notification was from the trust account I managed for my grandmother's estate. The trust where my parents kept the secondary retirement money my grandmother had left for them. The trust I had been the official executive of for 10 years. Although none of that 10 years had been a thing my mother knew about. A withdrawal had been flagged. $4,200. The account holder of record had signed it. The signature line read, Tessa Hewitt Merrick. 14 withdrawals in 18 months. This one made 14. I closed the app. I locked the screen. I took a slow breath that smelled of charcoal smoke from someone's grill across the dock. A portable speaker on the picnic table was playing jazz. The kind of jazz nobody listens to on purpose. The kind that comes on when someone with a streaming subscription says, set the mood. I went back outside, smiled at my mother as she walked past me, and she smiled back without breaking stride. She was on her way to a group photo by the dock. She did not call me over. Tessa's voice always carried. So did mine when I let it. Today I was not letting it yet. By 11:40, I had carried out 3 platters and refilled the ice chest twice because nobody else was going to do it, and I was the daughter who noticed when things ran out. I stepped through the kitchen for the lemonade, and that was when I overheard my mother. She was in the small den off the kitchen, the one where my father kept the safe and his gardening books. The door was open 3 in. I could see her shoulder. Take the new car, my mother was saying. Her voice was low, the conspirator voice she used when she was setting up something she felt clever about. Daddy and I want to see how you handle it. Try it on the highway. Take the long way back. I could not see Tessa. I heard her laugh. Just don't tell anyone where the keys came from, my mother added. I kept walking. The lemonade was on the counter, condensation already pooling under the pitcher. Beside the pitcher, half folded, was a piece of mail. The envelope had been opened. The letterhead was an insurance company. Auto policy. New vehicle endorsement. Vehicle. A current year Mercedes E-Class policyholder Carol Whitt. I did not pick it up. I did not photograph it. I walked past it, picked up the lemonade picture and carried it outside. My sister had been driving my mother's car for 2 months and calling it hers in front of cousins and neighbors and a great aunt who would have remembered every word. In the bathroom, I ran cold water over the inside of my wrists. Not as a calming trick, just because the water was cold and the day was warm and I needed a second. The light through the bathroom window was butter yellow, the way light gets at the moment of high noon when there are no clouds. I caught my own face in the mirror over the sink. I looked exactly like a woman who had been counting in her head for 6 months. I dried my hands. I went back outside. I set the lemonade pitcher on the picnic table beside the place where my father had left a beer. He nodded at me again. He still did not stand up. Tessa lifted her glass and tinkicked it twice with a butter knife. The conversations did not stop all at once. They petered out the way a porch light dims before a storm. Tessa stood by the head of the long table. The white linen of her dress caught the noon sun. Her glass caught it too. I want to make a toast, she said. A few cousins lifted their drinks. My father took a slow sip of his beer and set it back on the table. To my big sister. Tessa smiled. The smile was practiced. To the one who always shows up broke, needy, and still hoping to matter. My mother laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. She actually clapped. 3 quick taps of her palm against her thigh. My father snorted into his beer. Brett's mouth twitched into something, almost a grin. A first cousin near the cooler covered her own mouth with one hand and looked at the ground for about 3 full seconds. Nothing in me moved. The lake behind the dock did not move. The wind did not move. A dragonfly that had been hovering above the salt and pepper shakers did not move. I set my plate down. I stood up. I lifted the glass of water I had been nursing for 40 minutes. "I'd like to return the toast," I said. 24 heads turned. I let one breath go. To the desperate one, I said, who borrowed $18,000 from Mom and Dad's retirement account in March, then bought a Mercedes. Nobody breathed. Tessa's wine glass tilted in her hand. The red wine ran out of it onto the front of her white linen dress before she could stop it. She did not stop it. She did not blink. My mother's hand, the hand that had clapped, hung in the air halfway to her own collarbone, frozen. My father set his beer down very slowly like a man diffusing something. The dragonfly went somewhere else. I lifted my drink the rest of the way to my mouth, took a small swallow, and set the glass back down on the table. The water was warm now. It tasted like nothing. I sat. I picked up my plate. I returned to the potato salad I had not yet eaten any of me. 25 faces had forgotten how to swallow. Tessa recovered first. She always did. She made a sound that was supposed to be a laugh, but it caught somewhere in her throat and came out as a cough. "Wow, Sienna," she said. "That's quite the joke." I did not look up from my plate. "See," my mother said. The clap was gone from her voice now. "That's enough. This is a family event. Sit down," my father said to no one in particular. I was already sitting. So was Tessa. Eventually Aunt Marina, from the corner where she had been refilling cans of seltzer in a way that fooled exactly nobody, set her hands on her hips. "I think we should bring out the cake," she said. She said it the way a fire chief tells a crowd to step back. 2 cousins moved toward the kitchen. My mother turned her face toward the cake question because it was an easier question. Tessa pressed a paper napkin against the wine stain on her dress and made a face. She had probably practiced in a mirror. I finished my potato salad. I drank the warm water. I excused myself to the dock. Aunt Marina followed me a polite 90 seconds later with 2 paper cups of coffee. She handed me one. We stood at the rail and looked at the water for a while. The lake was the color of cold tea. A fishing boat moved very slowly across the far edge where the pines started. "It's begun, hasn't it?" she said. "I told them once," I said. "Back in February, Mom told me to mind my business. I take it as a contract. They get 1 warning." Marina nodded. She drank her coffee. "Father's Day weekend," she said. 2 Saturdays after that gives us 6 weeks. Phyllis can have the full timeline ready by Tuesday." I sipped the coffee. It was bad coffee. It was perfect. "They'll fight us," I said. "They'll fight you," Marina said. "I'm a sideshow. You're the act." I smiled finally. It was a very small smile, the kind that happens at the corner of one mouth and dies before it gets to the other corner. The fishing boat passed out of sight behind the pines. I had 6 weeks. I knew how to count. The Hewitt Extended Family Group chat had 217 members and a long history of cookie recipes. By 7 the next morning, it had a new top message. Tessa had posted it at 6:14 with 3 crying emojis and 1 prayer hands. Family. Sienna had a kind of meltdown at the picnic yesterday. She's been saying weird stuff about Mom's accounts. Please send Mom and Dad some love today. They're really shaken. I'm worried about my sister. Please pray with me. Aunts I had not spoken to since Easter began calling. I let 3 calls go to voicemail. The 4th was an aunt I actually liked, so I picked up while I was making coffee. "Sweetheart," she said. "Are you all right? Should I come up?" "I'm fine," I said. The picnic was difficult. There's some things going on with Tessa. I'd rather not talk about it on the phone. "Of course," she said. She did not push. I made a mental note to send her a Christmas card with effort behind it this year. My mother called at 8:40 while I was rinsing the picture. "You owe your sister a public apology," she said. "No greeting." Posted in the chat today. I'm not the one who needs to apologize, Mom. You humiliated her in front of the entire family. She humiliated me first. Mom, I just brought numbers. Don't use that tone with me. I'm not coming to dinner Wednesday. She hung up before I did. I made my coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. The morning doves were back in the eve. By 10 o'clock in the morning, I had 2 private messages waiting on my phone. The first was from Uncle Phil, my father's older brother, a retired contractor who had said maybe 4 words to me at every Memorial Day for 30 years. Sienna, there's more to this. Call me when you're ready. The second was from Aunt Marina. Phyllis says Tuesday, 8 o'clock p.m., Burlington office. Bring the whole thing. I poured a second cup of coffee. I opened the brown folder and added a printed screenshot of Tessa's group chat post. I put it at the top. Public moves, leave records. Tessa had never quite understood that part. It was how she had always lost. Phyllis Crane had worked for our family for 23 years. Her office was in the back room of a building in Burlington that used to be a pharmacy, then a tax preparer, and was now divided into 3 spaces by drywall. My father had once helped install on a weekend in 1998. The fluorescent ceiling light was the color of a school cafeteria. Phyllis was 64, gay-haired, brown sweater, half glasses. She kept 3 pens in a coffee mug that read, "World's okay, Nana." She had never had children. I sat across from her at 8:03 on Tuesday. She slid a single printed page across the desk. It was a timeline, 14 rows, from November of last year through May. She said, "Each row is a withdrawal from your parents' Trust B account, $8,642. The total is here." She tapped the bottom of the page. $8,400. I read it twice. "The most recent transaction," Phyllis said, "is here." She slid a second page across this one. "Last week, $15,000 wired to an LLC in Albany." I read the LLC name, Gravesend Holdings LLC. "What is it?" I said that part I haven't been able to confirm yet. The state filings list a registered agent in upstate New York. No operating address. I have a name. I haven't called. I'll go. I said drive over Thursday. She said, "I'll be in the office. Call me when you know." I stayed quiet for a moment. The office smelled like warm paper and the inside of a coffee thermos. The street light outside the window was buzzing. "Phyllis," I said, "the power of attorney." She nodded. "Your parents signed it last June. There's a clause in there I didn't write and didn't see when they brought it to me to file. It says discretionary management of assets, including reallocation. That clause wasn't in the version Mom showed me last fall. I have both versions," she said, "the original and the amendment. I made copies as soon as I noticed. I let that breath go." Phyllis was not angry on my behalf. Phyllis was organized. In our family, that was rarer than love. I put the 2 pages in my folder on top of the chat screenshot and zipped the inner pocket shut. Gravesend Holdings, LLC operated out of a single office on the 2nd floor of a building in downtown Albany, above a bagel shop and a tax preparer. The bagel shop smelled like butter at 10 o'clock in the morning. The stairs creaked. The receptionist was a woman named Diane who was reading a paperback novel when I walked in. She looked up. The waiting area had 2 chairs and a fern. "I don't have an appointment," I said. "I'm trying to confirm whether an entity is being serviced here." "The entity is in my sister's name." She set the novel face down on the desk. "We can't share details on accounts," she said, "but I can confirm whether or not we have a relationship." I gave her the name Tessa Hewitt Merrick. She typed. She paused. She read. "There's an active account." She said, "I can't tell you the specifics, but yes, the account is in active servicing. The balance is significant." "Define significant," I said. She looked at me kindly. She closed the screen. "I can't, ma'am. I'm sorry." I thanked her. I went back down the creaking stairs. I sat in my car in the bagel shop parking lot and called Phyllis. Phyllis put me on hold for 9 minutes. When she came back, her voice was very calm. $217,000, she said. Consumer credit consolidation active for 5 years. The Mercedes is leased through a separate company, but the lease payments have been pulled from a card that's now in this consolidation. I let one full breath out. She's been drowning, I said. She's been drowning, Phyllis said, and pulling Carol and Doug under because she didn't know how to swim alone. I sat in the bagel shop lot for 20 more minutes after the call ended. I did not cry. I had cried about Tessa 11 years ago after a different fight, and I had decided then that crying about Tessa was a tax I was no longer paying. I opened a small spiral notebook in the glove box. I wrote a list. Mom, Dad, Caleb, Brett, Uncle Phil, Aunt Mary. I wrote the names of every relative Tessa might have asked for money. I wrote them all on the same page so I could see the shape of them. The shape was a hand. On the drive back from Albany, I took a long detour. I drove past my grandmother's old house, the one Aunt Marina had bought from the estate when my grandmother died, and I parked across the street. I did not get out. The afternoon was overcast in the soft way the Champlain Valley gets in late spring. The grass in the front yard was uneven where the previous owner, Marina, had stopped caring. A bird feeder hung empty from the front porch. The screen door, which I had walked through 3,000 times as a child, had a new coat of paint. I sat in the driver's seat with my hands on the wheel and watched a stranger's car pass behind me and turn at the corner. If you're watching this right now and you have someone in your life who's slowly emptying everything around them, a sister, a brother, sometimes even a parent, and you've been the only one to notice, I want you to do something for me. Pause just for a second. Tap the like button. It helps stories like this one find women who need to hear them. Subscribe if you haven't yet. The next chapter is what I did with the folder and what my mother said when she finally picked up the phone 3 days later with her voice very small. Comment one word. Stay. Just so I know you're still with me. I'll meet you back at the bagel shop parking lot where I had just turned the key in the ignition. I turned the key. The dashboard lit up. The radio came on very low and was playing something I did not recognize. A song from the Eights about a woman who had stopped explaining herself. I let it play. The folder on the passenger seat had not moved. It looked exactly the way it had looked yesterday and the day before. It weighed exactly what it had weighed when I packed it that morning. There is a particular weight a folder gets when you know what's inside cannot be unread. Mine had that weight now. I would carry it for 38 more days. I pulled away from the curb in front of my grandmother's house. The fields on either side of the back road were the same fields they had always been. My brother lived in a part of Portland, Oregon, that had become more expensive every year of his adult life. He had not visited Vermont in 3 years. He had not visited Memorial Day in 8. He called me Tuesday night, 2 days after the picnic, at exactly the moment I was washing one plate. Mom called me. Caleb said, "She told me you're attacking Tessa." I dried the plate on a towel. "Hey, Caleb," I said. "Sienna, is it true?" "Some of it is true," I said. I told the truth at the picnic. The truth happens to be that Tessa took $18,000 from Mom and Dad's retirement account in March and bought a Mercedes. Long silence on his end, long enough that I heard the rain falling on his side of the country. "Do you have proof?" he said. "I have all of it." He let one breath out. "Tessa asked me to co-sign a $4,000 loan in February. He said, I said no. I told her I couldn't afford to be on paper for it. She got mean. Sienna, she told me I was abandoning the family. She said she would tell Mom that I didn't care about her future. She said she would make sure Mom knew. Did she? I don't know. Mom hasn't mentioned it. She wouldn't. Mom only talks about the children who don't disappoint her." He laughed. It was a tired laugh. The first warm sound I had heard in 3 days. "Send me the screenshots," I said. He sent 4. They arrived on my phone while we were still on the call. I looked at them on speaker. The texts from Tessa to Caleb were paragraphs long, full of italics, and the kinds of phrases people use when they have read 3 books on emotional appeal and 1 on negotiation. They escalated over 6 days. The last one threatened to tell our father that Caleb was selfish like Sienna. That last word hit me a little harder than I expected. "Caleb," I said, "will you come for Father's Day weekend? There's a meeting." "Yeah, I'll fly in Friday." We sat on the line for another full minute without saying anything. He hung up first. The rain on his end did not stop. I saved the screenshots into a folder marked Caleb February. My mother called me at 9:14 on Sunday night. I was on the couch reading a paperback I had owned for 10 years and had never finished. The cover had a lighthouse on it. I never finished books with lighthouses on the cover. When her name came up on the screen, I marked my page with a receipt and answered. "Sienna," she said. I knew immediately something was wrong. Her voice was small. My mother's voice was never small. My mother's voice cleared rooms. "I'm here, Mom. I went to the bank today. I waited. I wanted to see the balance," she said. "On the retirement account, the man wouldn't show me. He kept saying authorization required. He said it 3 times. What does that mean?" I closed the book. I considered for one whole second telling her gently, the kind of gentle that takes care of the listener and not the truth. I chose the truth. "Mom," I said, "Tessa has been managing your money. Did you know how much?" The line did not go quiet. The line did the opposite. The line filled up with all of the small kitchen sounds my mother surrounded herself with. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint rasp of her breathing, a wooden spoon she must have set down on the counter. "I trust her," my mother said. "I know," I said. "That's what she counted on." "Sienna, I love you, Mom." She was quiet again. Then she said, "I have to go." She hung up before I could say anything else. I sat on the couch with the phone face down on my thigh for a long time. The lighthouse on the cover of the paperback caught the lamplight at an angle and looked for a second like a folded white napkin. I picked up the brown folder from the coffee table. I opened the cover. On the inside flap, where Phyllis had taped a small running log of every conversation we had had about the case, I wrote a new line. Sunday, 9:14 p.m. Mom called. Bank refused to show balance. She is asking questions. She had not believed me yet, but she had asked. In our family, asking was the first form of revolution. It was also the only form she had ever been willing to attempt. That was a beginning. Aunt Marina and I met for breakfast on Wednesday at a diner 3 miles north of the lake. The diner had been there since 1957. The vinyl booths were the color of pool water and patched in 3 places with electrical tape. We ordered clam chowder. It was not chowder season. The diner did not care. Marina waited until the bowls were on the table. Then she set her spoon down without using it. "I have to tell you something. I've been caring for 10 years, she said. I waited. "When your grandmother was dying," she said, "your mother came to me. She asked me to be the executive of the trust. She said she wanted it kept inside the family. I had not known any of this. I refused. Marina said, I told her, Carol, give it to Sienna. Sienna's the one who can keep books in her head and balance them with one hand. Your mother said, no. She said, you weren't, in her words, professional enough. What did she mean by that? She meant you didn't dress the way she wanted. She meant you didn't introduce yourself by your title at parties. She meant the thing she'd always meant about you. The clam chowder was cooling. I did not lift my spoon either. So I went around her, Marina said. 3 days later, I sat down with your grandmother. I had her sign a small amendment to the trust. The amendment named me executive with a right to transfer the role to someone of my choosing, with a successor clause and a notarized signature. And then 2 months later, I transferred the role to you. Phyllis processed the paperwork. Your grandmother was still lucid that week. She wrote a note for you. I put it in the file. You can have it whenever you want. I had not breathed out yet. Mom doesn't know. I said, your mother has been writing checks to a trust for 10 years that she thought your sister would eventually inherit. Marina said, she's been wrong for a decade. So have I. About how long that decade would last. I lifted the spoon. The chowder was now lukewarm. I ate it anyway. The jukebox shifted to a Patty Klein song. Now, Marina said, we tell your father. Tessa found out I was talking to Phyllis on a Thursday. I am not certain how. I suspect Brett mentioned a name in passing that he should not have known. By Thursday night, my mother was on the phone with 2 of her sisters and a cousin in New Hampshire. By Friday morning, she had a story she was telling about me. The story was that I was trying to seize power of attorney from her and my father. The story was that I had become obsessed with the inheritance. The story was that I had, in Tessa's words, always wanted what Mom and Dad had. My mother believed the story by lunchtime. She called me at 12:40 in the afternoon when I was at my desk in the Burlington office. "We need a family meeting," she said. "All of us, the lake house, Saturday after next, 11 in the morning. We are going to settle this once and for all." I closed the listing report I had been reading. "All right, Mom," I said. "You will be respectful," she said. "Your father agrees. I will be exactly the daughter you raised." She missed the meaning. She always did. My father texted me 11 minutes later. The text was short. "Bring whatever you need to say. Be respectful." He used a period. He never used periods. I knew immediately what the meeting was. Tessa was setting a trap. She was forcing me into a confrontation early before I had the strength of all my paperwork in front of me. She was hoping I would walk in with my mouth open and my folder thin, and that I would lose my temper, and that the family would pity her. She had read me the way she always read me. She had read me as the old version, the version that had not been counting since November. I called Phyllis at 1 o'clock. 11 days, I said. Family meeting, the lake house, Saturday after next. Phyllis was quiet for 2 seconds. "All right," she said. "I'll clear the calendar. You print the originals. I'll print the certified copies. Marina will bring her amendment. We will have everything on that table by 10:50. "Good, Sienna," she said. "Once you put this in front of them, you can't take it back." "I know. Just checking." She said on the Tuesday before the meeting. Phyllis, Marina, and I sat around the conference table at my Burlington office. The only light in the room was the desk lamp. The fluorescent overheads hummed in the hallway, but I had switched them off. I wanted the table to feel like a kitchen table. People tell the truth at kitchen tables. The 3 folders sat in front of us in identical brown manila. Phyllis had labeled them with a Sharpie. Folder 1, the timeline. 14 withdrawals, $8,6,400. Bank statement stapled behind for my parents. Folder 2, the power of attorney original. The amendment with the inserted discretionary clause. The Albany LLC filings. The Mercedes lease pulled from public records. The $207,000 consolidation account for everyone. Folder 3, Caleb's screenshots. The group chat post. The trust amendment my grandmother had signed 10 years ago transferring execute. We sat for a long time without speaking. The desk lamp made one yellow circle on the wood. The folders sat inside the circle. "Once you put this in front of them," Phyllis said, "you cannot take it back. The relationships do not return to the version they were before this morning. You understand?" "I understand." "Even if your sister apologizes," Marina said. "Even if your mother apologizes, the version of the family that lived in the not knowing is gone." "I understand." I had thought about it for 6 months. I had thought about it on the back roads, in the bathroom mirror, in the bagel shop parking lot, in the diner over clam chowder. The alternative was that my parents would be broke in 14 months at the burn rate Phyllis had calculated. The alternative was that Tessa would never stop drowning. The alternative was that my father would die in 8 years and discover in the last month of his life that the retirement he had worked 43 years to build had been spent on credit card interest. That was not an alternative. I printed a 4th folder. I printed it on the office printer at 11:40 p.m. while Phyllis was already in her coat. "What's that one for?" Marina said. "For Tessa," I said. Marina looked at me a long time. "That's a kindness she has not earned." She said, "I know." I said. My phone rang at 4:07 a.m. on Thursday morning, 2 days before the meeting. It was my father. My father did not call me. My father had sent me 4 text messages in the past 2 years, all of them about plumbing. I sat up in bed in the dark. I did not turn on the lamp. "See," he said. His voice did something I had never heard it do. It trembled. "Dad, are you okay? I went through the safe last night. I couldn't sleep. The bonds. The Series 1 bonds your grandmother bought me in 1986. They're not where I left them. I waited. I called the bank when they opened. I caught the early shift. They were cashed last Tuesday. $104,400. The signature looks like mine. It is not mine.